Hello everyone and welcome back to another exciting edition of Boyographic, the show in which I, Matt the Gameboy, take you through the highs and lows of the Game Boy library, one cart at a time. This week we'll be looking at a classic on the Nintendo Game Boy. It's Ninja Gaiden Shadow. Ninjas in the 90s were a pretty well-established cultural cornerstone of being something pretty fucking cool. With seeds firmly sown in 1970s Americana and the rising interest in all things martial arts, ninjas were up there with pirates and robots as far as most kids were concerned. But naturally, as every marketing person in the world of entertainment threw generous helpings of all things ninja into any entertainment property idea imaginable for over 2 decades, the ninja slowly but surely mirrored the zombies' current place in pop culture and began to wane in popularity. But the diminishing returns brought on by the ninja on the silver screen weren't felt in the world of video games, which isn't truly a surprise, as with so many Japanese developers, the tradition of the ninja was kept alive and unwesternized in the form of titles like Shinobi and Strider. But it wasn't until 1991 that the king of all ninja games of the NES era would make its way onto everyone's favourite 8-bit handheld in Ninja Gaiden Shadow. Yes folks, Tecmo's classic NES trilogy got a Game Boy spin-off starring the one and only Ryo Hayabusa just months after the release of the last game on the NES, Ninja Gaiden 3, The Internship of Doom. By looking at the game's cover, you would be forgiven in thinking that this was simply a port of the first NES game, as it shares the game's artwork in almost every Western territory. But the wall jumping, distinctive storytelling, and even the variety of special abilities Ryu can use are all absent in Ninja Gaiden Shadow. Why, you might ask? Well, because this is only really a Ninja Gaiden game in name. You see, Ninja Gaiden Shadow, or Shadow Warriors as is known in Europe for reasons I've already gone into, wasn't solely developed by Tecmo. In fact, a large majority of the game is actually made by Natsume, as, well, it was supposed to be a port of their Ninja Gaiden-inspired NES title, Shadow of the Ninja. That's presumed to have been snapped up at the last moment and converted into the game we all know today. Even in the finished property, traces of Shadow of the Ninja remain beyond the nod in the game's title. The end boss is still Emperor Garuda, some of the game's music made the transition, and in the place of Ninja Gaiden's wall jump is Ryu's newfound ability to cling to rails. The Shadow of the Ninja port even got so far as to be previewed by Nintendo Power before being repurposed by Tecmo, but to my knowledge has never surfaced as a playable prototype. But as a child of the 90s, you would have never have known this, so let's treat this game as a pure Ninja Gaiden experience for the time being. Set 3 years before the events of the original NES title, Ryo Hayabusa must save New York City from the forces of evil in the form of Jakio's servant General Garuda. To get there, Ryo will need to battle through 5 stages of platforming pandemonium, killing a large variety of enemies as he goes. At the end of each stage, Ryo will take on a boss before progressing to the next stage, as is Ninja Gaiden tradition. In the place of wall jumps, Ryu has, as previously mentioned, the ability to cling to and climb under selected platforms to traverse the level. But more impressive than this is the addition of a Bionic Commando-esque grappling hook to reach them, which will come in handy a lot in the later stages of the game. On top of this, Ryu has access to his Fire Wheel attack, which sends out a burst of damages almost anything on screen. Ryu can hold 5 of these, which, like health potions and extra lives, can be found by destroying certain obstacles in the environment around him. Though lives won't really be an issue in this game, as by Ninja Gaiden standards, this game is pretty straightforward. While you do have less health than the other entries in the series, the game is quite generous with its health potions and offers quite regular checkpoints throughout the stages. Bosses may take some time to master, as their patterns can be a little tricky to the uninitiated, but like any good level design, you can traverse back to these bosses pretty easy once you run out of lives and need to continue. Beyond gameplay, Ninja Gaiden looks pretty damn great for an early Game Boy title. It has a large variety of sprites, beautiful backdrops, and very rarely tears outside of boss fights. its music too is brilliant. As previously mentioned, the score is almost the greatest hits of Ninja Gaiden and Shadow the Ninja's NES soundtracks, all of which are beautifully transferred to the DMG. Though it isn't quite the game Ninja Gaiden fans would perhaps want it to be, Ninja Gaiden Shadow offers a great experience that isn't too taxing on the casual connoisseur. What it lacks in wall jumps, it certainly makes up for in both gameplay and aesthetics. While it is quite an easy title almost right up until the end of the game, it's not monotonous as there is a great deal of challenge in the title in the form of its bosses. I implore you to pick it up if you see it cheap, as slowly the price of this game is rising purely based on the NES title's reputation. And while not essential to a great Game Boy library, Ninja Gaiden is still a fun game to have. And that brings us to the end of another Boyographic, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you've enjoyed. If you have, please subscribe and share the channel with others you think may be interested in it. And if you are new to the channel, why not check out some more of our Boyographic videos where I look at the highs and lows of the Game Boy library one cart at a time. You can also check out some Boy Curious segments where I look at bootlegs and oddities for the Game Boy and Game Boy Color, but you can also check out some of All the Glory videos where I play through a game, cutting out all of the deaths, leaving you with none of the faff, but all of the glory. Until next week, Game Boys and girls, game on.